Well, not good news for the Transport Department and all of us, really. The department had pinned its hopes on a reduction of some 25% in terms of the crashes and fatalities. Joining me now is Layton Beard from the Automobile Association of South Africa to unpack some of these numbers. So the figure there, Layton, says human factors contributed 79% to the occurrence of fatal crashes, while road factors contributed 11% and vehicle factors 10%. So statistically, it's beyond any dispute that the human element remains key in terms of contributing to crashes that in many instances end up being fatal.
Yeah, I think that's a very unfortunate way of characterizing it, Tulasiwe, not by you, but by the statistics. I think when we look at human error as being 80% of the reason why crashes occur, we need to look a little more deeply into that. And I think the minister actually touched on it when he spoke about pedestrian deaths, which comprise 40% of all fatalities. And he said, you know, we're talking about jaywalking. Well, why are people jaywalking? They're jaywalking because there aren't proper bridges for them to cross over busy roads. There aren't crossings for them to cross over busy roads. The roads that they have to cross over do not make provision for them to get over safely. Is that a human error or is that a structural problem? And I think that, you know, you can extrapolate that to many other different things. You know, we know there are very busy roads in the country. Are they all double-lane roads or are they all single for very long stretches? So it's an engineering question. So we talk about human error, but it needs to be seen in the context of, are the roads themselves geared towards taking traffic? Are all the roads properly lit? You know, can people walk on the side of the road, or are they forced to walk on the road surface because there's no alternative? So, you know, to continually say human error is the result, is the cause of all of these crashes, I think is unfair. And it speaks to a major structural issue regarding road safety in South Africa, and that is looking at all aspects of road use and mobility before just pinning it on one issue such as human error. Human error also indicates, and this is something we've known for very many years in each and every one of the speeches the minister gives in relation to road fatalities, this issue of human error is raised. And apart from the fact that it's just, you know, one aspect of it, if we know this, what are we doing to improve driver behavior and educate drivers? Or do we have intensive education campaigns in schools? Do we have intensive awareness campaigns throughout the year? So we can continue pointing out certain things, but unless we do something about it, these numbers aren't going to decrease. And a 25% reduction is important, and it's certainly something we should be aiming for. But the bigger issue is we need to reduce our road fatalities by half by 2030. That is a commitment the South African government made in Stockholm in 2020 to the third ministerial conference on road safety. Doing it this way, we're not going to achieve those figures at all.
Layton, taking to heart everything you've just said and not discounting it at all in terms of the unfairness that you point out of singling out the human factor and human error in particular. But is there a point there to be made about, you know, turning around the situation around driver behavior as well, infractions that are quite common, speeding, for example. You mentioned the fact that, you know, the education of drivers as well as enforcement continue to be an element. But is there a further conversation to be had there? Is the situation getting worse in terms of driver behavior, objective and separate from what you just pointed out now?
Yeah, it's a very good point, Tulasiwe, and I completely agree with you. And I think when you look at the numbers of people who are arrested and you compare those to the number of people who are prosecuted, you see there's a huge disconnect. Drunk driving, let's take that as an example. 4% of people who are caught drunk driving are prosecuted. Therein lies a huge story. It's all about people seeing justice to be done and taking lessons from that. So yes, we certainly need better law enforcement. We need double the amount of traffic law enforcers than what we currently have. That's not the AA saying that. That's a government-appointed task team that gave a report to the Minister of Transport in 2019 and said, hey, professionalize traffic law enforcement and double the amounts of traffic law enforcers. We've got to have more boots on the ground. So therein is one answer to that. We need a lot more in terms of road safety. Road safety is something that doesn't have one element to it. And I think that's the point that the AA makes over and over again. You can't just look at one issue and think that that's the silver bullet that's going to solve road safety. It requires a wholesale approach to looking at all elements around mobility and road safety and dealing effectively with each and every one of those elements. You can't just take one issue, such as, for instance, drunk driving, and say we're going to lower alcohol limits. You can't do that if you don't improve the traffic law enforcement environment, which is actually very good in South Africa in terms of drunk driving. Why reduce the alcohol level to 0.00 when we've got really good laws currently on our statute books, but they aren't enforced? I think that's the point that we're making to Lasizwe.
Yeah. Layton, I'm just wondering now, 14% increase compared to the previous reporting period, which would be, 2020 December, the comparison with December 2021. I imagine then that the whole issue around restrictions that were in place in line with the disaster management regulations and the state of disaster that we're in and lockdowns also feature in the equation. But I suppose then, Layton, we're never really going to maintain, and rest on our laurels based on something that was a temporary restriction on the movement of people. The more and more we open up, the more we revert to, the normal situation.
Yeah, 100% agree with you. I mean, I think it stands to reason. The less vehicles you have on the road, the less crashes they're going to be. It's something we've seen. It doesn't always hold true. In other parts of the world, it hasn't always been as cut and dried as that. But certainly in a South African context, we had less vehicles on the road over specific periods, and that resulted in a reduction in the number of fatalities and crashes we had. Now that those restrictions are being eased, we're seeing more traffic on the roads, we're seeing more people getting behind the wheel, and obviously that's going to lead to more crashes as more people go on holiday, specifically over this period. So yes, I mean, there is a direct correlation between those two. But at the same time, I think that just speaks to the need for us to deal effectively with road safety in South Africa. Look, let's not beat around the bush on this, Lasizwe. Road safety is a national crisis in South Africa. It's a dire situation. It costs our economy 190 billion rand a year. It's something we have to sort out. It's an imperative if our economy is to grow that we deal effectively with road safety. And speaking about it just at festive season periods and throwing resources at it over a 2 or 3 week period is not going to solve that situation. We need urgent intervention, and it requires inputs from civil society organizations such as the AA. And for us, that's an absolute necessity going forward.
Yeah, actually, you take my last question right out of my mouth, Layton. So we can conclude the conversation here, because I was going to talk about this flash-in-the-pan approach that says at specific points during the year, we sort of get this saturation of news and focus on road safety. And immediately after that, by February, it has completely died down altogether. But you've already addressed that point. Layton Beard from the Automobile Association there, thank you for your time and your insights here on eNCA.